Welcome to the Strength and Courage podcast, a podcast focused on helping you lead with strength and courage in every situation you face. The Strength and Courage podcast is hosted by Ben Thomas and Hassan Kibirango. The Strength and Courage podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Be to the World. Be to the World focuses on bringing fullness of life to the future of every child impacted by war. Stand with the millions of children in countries recovering from war so they can receive a transformative education. Start your journey as a Be to the World ambassador by making a monthly donation at www.betotheworld.org/donate. And now to Ben and Hassan for today's episode.
Friends, welcome to episode 22 of the Strength and Courage Leadership Podcast. This episode has a very special meaning for us here in Rwanda as we're in the season of remembrance. Kwibuka 28, a time in Rwanda every year where we remember the journey that the country's been on as it remembers the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. This is an incredibly sensitive conversation. It's one that we're approaching with as many and all sensitivities as possible. It's one that I would encourage you just to listen in and consider with a heavy heart, with a heart of empathy, a heart of peace, a posture of learning, as we talk about lessons that I've personally learned in my 8 years of living in Rwanda and experiencing my 8th Kwibuka since living here since 2014 in July. Friends, let me just start off by saying I am not an expert, but I am a huge, huge fan and proponent of Rwanda. I'm one that has spent more than 8 years living here. That's over 30%, over a third of our married life has been living life in Rwanda. It's a place that we call home, a place that is near and dear to our family. It's a place where we lead. It's a place where we live, and we pray and hope that it's also a place that we love well. And so I come to you with a sense even of trepidation, knowing how sensitive and how horrific the 94 genocide against the Tutsi was. And it's also a place that I want to honor the people that I have seen lead with strength and courage in my time here as they have led a country towards healing and towards unity. And it's a place that I'd love to be able to share with a sense of peace and humility with friends that may be listening around the world that don't really understand the journey of Rwanda. And so that's where we're coming from today. And I hope and I pray that as we talk through this today, it's a place that you can better understand not only what happened in 94, but actually the journey that the country has been on and where Rwanda is going, because it's a place that I believe serves as a model for us when it comes to healing, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to unity. So with that, I would really ask that you join me on this podcast today with that spirit, a spirit of learning, a posture of being together with the people of Rwanda during this season of remembrance. So let me just quickly take you back to April 7th, 1994, and that's where the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi begins its mark of remembrance. And so every year Rwanda has Kwibuka. So this year is Kwibuka 28. It's a time to remember, it's a time to renew, and it's a time to unite as one country. And during that time, it's now found that well over 1 million people were killed in Rwanda over the span of 100 days. And it was a killing that was based on ethnic identity. It was a killing, a massacre based on trying to eliminate a people group. And it was driven with incredible violence, horrific realities, and no description that's found in a movie or anything that you may have seen in Hollywood could accurately describe the account of friends that lived through that and journeyed through that. And so it's a journey that the country of Rwanda and the people of Rwanda are continuing to be on, as every year they take time, 100-day period between now and July 4th, when Kigali and Rwanda was liberated by the Rwandan Patriotic Front from the hands of the genocidaires, and the country was taken back during that time, and the process of healing began. So this season is a season of remembrance. It does happen every year, and it's a incredibly heavy and powerful time here in Rwanda. And so when I travel around the world, when I speak in places, the question that I'll often get that is actually quite offensive and quite ignorant is Rwanda still in ethnic or tribal warfare? And I don't know what to do with that other than reject it and point people to Rwanda today and the lessons that Rwanda has learned, and the not lessons Rwanda has learned, but the path that Rwanda has chosen to take over these 28 years, and the lessons I've learned in the 8 years that I've been here. And so each year on April 7th begins the time of remembrance, and this is marked here in the country through the lighting of the flame of remembrance, as well as different activities where the country can remember together, can be together. Rwanda is such a communal country, and so there's so much that's done together. I've had the real privilege of walking with some friends during the Walk to Remember, and then going to the National Stadium for the service, the vigil that happens there as well. And so the journey from 94 to now, Rwanda is one country that is not marked by ethnic divisions, but it really is marked by the unity and the strength of its people, which are one Rwanda. And I remember President Kagame speaking a few years ago at the vigil at the stadium, and he said the hardest thing that he has had to do is ask the survivors to continue to forgive the perpetrators. And I remember just being struck by that. And I've seen that over and over again in each of my Rwandan friends that have been personally impacted by the 94 genocide against the Tutsi. They've had to make the choice over and over again every day to forgive, to not forget, but to forgive, to be able to say, I forgive the person that's killed a member of my family. I forgive this person that has brought this trauma and this tragedy into my life, and to be able to move forward together. And so every year, the country itself takes a 100-day period of remembrance, and it's a period that's marked by a somber state in the country. There's the national day, and then each family will also, in that 100 days, remember the day that their family member was killed and impacted as well. So throughout You see it at an individual level, you see it at a country level, and then you also see it neighborhood by neighborhood at a community level, different opportunities for remembrance as well. And, so for those of you that know, I'm Indian and born and raised in America. And recently I was speaking at a conference, and America's a country right now that's so divided. And I think one of the reasons why Rwanda is not divided is because they take the time to remember. They take the time to honor the lives that were lost. They take the time to learn and educate the current generation and the next generation of youth and children as to the lessons of genocide and what led to it and what it was and why it's not okay. They help this generation understand how to live with the tension of that why and how to be able to build a better future so that their country and other countries around the world should never experience this ever again. And so I was speaking at this conference, which was an educational leadership conference, and I remember saying to them, why is it so hard for us in America to acknowledge the sins of our past as a country? The sins of slavery against African Americans, the sins of genocide against the Native Americans, the sins of internment against the Japanese and Asian Americans. And yet we want to just move towards, we're the United States, we're all together. And yet there's so many great divisions that keep us so apart in America. And yet what I've found here in Rwanda is not a fake sense of unity, but a unity that's been driven by the survivors, a unity that's been driven by the leadership that's basically said, if we were to kill everyone who killed somebody else, then what makes us different than the killers? And it's been a country and a people that have modeled forgiveness in ways that really have been unparalleled in my experience anywhere else around the world. I recently returned from a trip to Iraq where I was hosted by a few friends that I had hosted, Iraqi friends that I had hosted here in Rwanda. And after they had gone through the Genocide Museum Memorial, they said, wow, Rwanda is really one country now. And in our country, we're still at least 2 or 3 countries within one country. And friends, I think there's so much to be learned by remembering. One, it gives space to mourn. And mourning, God calls us to mourn. Jesus calls us to mourn. We see examples of mourning throughout Scripture. Mourning and mourning together can be such a powerful act of community and such a powerful act of relationship and such a powerful act of being together. And so I've learned the importance of mourning, and as a foreigner, as one that did not experience the 94 genocide against the Tutsi personally, I was in 11th grade at the time in the U.S. It's given me a chance just to mourn with my friends who mourn. And what that's looked like is just being with them, being available, walking with them, and just listening to them as and when they might want to share the story of what that was like for them and their families. So my first lesson from Rwanda in this season of Kwibuka, of the power of remembering, is just the importance of mourning and taking that space, creating that space, not just personally, but as a country, for the country to mourn together, for the people living in the country to mourn together and to be together. Secondly, the second lesson that I've learned through the Kwibuka experience each year is the power of forgiveness, and how even in mourning, even in remembering, it gives the people of Rwanda the opportunity to forgive yet again, to remember those that were perpetrators, remember those that had killed their loved ones, and to be able to forgive over and over and over again, because that pain is with you for your lifetime. And yet it provides a space for a national level of forgiveness, a community level of forgiveness, and a personal level of forgiveness as well. And then the third lesson that I've learned in the importance of remembering is that it shows the children of Rwanda the important lessons of how to move forward, not filled with hatred or disunity, but filled with a sense of unity and love as a country. A sense of what are the areas to watch out for and make sure never happen again, but also with a sense of how do we move forward together? How do we build a country together? And I think that is such a great model for the children of Rwanda that served the country so well. And so for me, as I think about Kwibuka, and as I think about the lessons learned of mourning, of forgiving, and teaching the next generation, I wanted just to share this brief reflection with you on our podcast today, to say to the people of Rwanda, we stand with you. We remember with you the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We mourn with you. We are praying for you as you go through this process of mourning and forgiving. And then as educators, we stand with you in helping to educate the next generation of Rwanda and the future of Rwanda to never forget, and to move the country forward in unity and in strength and in courage as it moves towards the beautiful picture that Rwanda is. And so the journey from 94 to today, if you come to Rwanda today, it is a country filled with beauty, natural beauty, and the beauty of its people. It's a country that's resilient. It's a country that has rebuilt itself. It is a country that has a clear vision for its future, first crafted in Vision 2020 by President Kagame and several others, and they've achieved several of those goals, and now they've updated that document, that vision, to be Vision 2050. It's a country that has risen from the ashes of the genocide, and really it's a country that stands as an example, not just to other countries on the continent, but I would say stands as an example to countries worldwide that have never taken the time to remember the sins of their past, that have never taken time to remember the opportunities of division that have happened in their own countries. It stands as an example of how a country can move from the most devastating tragedy towards places of healing and places of unity. And that doesn't happen overnight. It might not even happen in a lifetime or in a generation. But it is happening, and it's continuing to happen because every year they take time to remember. So I would encourage all those who've never been to Rwanda to really learn from these lessons that Rwanda has to offer. And to my dear friends in Rwanda, I would say, Turi kumwe, we stand together, we're with you, and thanks for allowing us to be a part of the learning and to be able to learn from you as you lead with strength and courage. There's been no greater people than the Rwandan people that have taught me about strength and courage. And we stand with you in this time of Kwibuka, this time of remembrance, and it's an honor to be with you. Friends, this concludes the episode 22 of the Strength and Courage podcast. We encourage you wherever you are to remember, to learn from the incredible lessons that Rwanda has to teach us through its own pain and tragedy, and how it's rising and continuing to rise and be a shining example for so many in how to move from tragedy towards healing and unity as a country. Thanks so much for taking this time to listen to us today, and we look forward to being with you next time on the Strength and Courage podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for joining us today on the Strength and Courage podcast. Please share this episode with your friends and tag us on social media. Ben and Hassan are active across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You could follow Ben on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Ben P. Thomas. You could follow Hassan on Twitter at Kibirango. Send us your questions via Twitter and we'll get back to you. Thanks to our sponsors at Be to the World. Visit www.betotheworld.org/donate to become a Be to the World ambassador today. Until next time, lead with strength and courage, because at least one person in this world needs you too.